So really a bit of background for everyone. So the Profit First Club is the foundations is Profit First. So the foundations is, we are Profit First accountants. We live and breathe Profit First. We run it in our own business. We've seen lots of other people introduce it. So the foundation is definitely all about Profit First. And those first 2 sessions are the groundwork really for a lot of people. And there's a lot of resources which we're going to build on over time. That being said, we can't do the same topic every month in terms of, the same thing. So although it's called the Profit First Club, we're definitely going to have that thread running all the way through, and, encourage Q&As from people. Obviously, just the 2 of you here live, but for anyone else watching, you can, reach out to us, any questions off the back of those. But I want it to be a bit more than Profit First. So I'm keeping, so we've got a nice casual sort of a nice organic flow. We're going to still stick with numbers, so we're not jumping into marketing or anything too kind of out there compared to Profit First. So we're going to look at budgeting, and what I really want to do for you guys and anyone else who ends up watching this is kind of take away the myth and the kind of what's involved with creating forecasts and creating budgets. Because if you speak to lots of business owners, most of them probably don't have a proper budget written down. They might have something in their head. You probably got an idea, and often what we have in our head, and it's not a bad starting place, often that's, what did I do last year? What do I think this year's going to look like in our head? So it might be, last year was a good year, last year was a bad year, let's add 10% on, or, maybe we're going to do a bit worse because we've lost these clients or we've lost these customers. So there's a little bit more science to it, but the good news is I'm not training anybody to be a bookkeeper, anybody being an accountant. Really what I want to do is keep it really nice and simple, just to kind of, as I say, take away the complexity, so you know how to do your own budget ultimately. We use Xero, but it doesn't really matter. The same principle applies whether you do it on a spreadsheet, whether you do it on QuickBooks, whether you get some special software. Just got someone else joining. Let's give David a second to join. So it doesn't really matter which system you use. We will do it on Xero because that's what we tend to use internally. Principles are exactly the same. Hi, David. So I just gave everyone a bit of background, just saying that we're going to dive into budgeting today. So I want people to be a bit more confident in doing their own budget. So we're going to look at Xero, but it applies to other systems. Okay, so we're going to dive straight in pretty much. Any of you guys got any questions around budgeting or anything particularly on that topic you'd like me to cover?
Nothing specifically, but yeah, it's definitely an area that I'm interested in because I don't, really know how to. I've been trying to sort of do it lately, but particularly with mine where it's seasonal and you've got properties coming on, going off, it's very difficult to budget, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's a good, good area to focus on actually. So, have you historically had any sort of budgets, Daniel, in the past, or was it kind of been in your head? Anything written down?
Not really, no. That's what I'm trying to sort of create, is something that I can know, right? Okay, this is what our budget is, this is what we can spend. And the forecast, the forecast bit was something I was talking to you about before, but because the books are a bit of a mess, I'm only just sort of starting to get a bit of a clearer picture now. We've moved over to the new Xero with the limited company and almost kind of starting again. So I still don't have a year's worth behind me really. So that's probably what I'm waiting to build up.
I see. Yeah, no, that makes sense. How about you guys? How about you, David? Have you done any form of budgeting in the past, even if you've not called it that?
No, I've just been winging it.
Yeah, that's what most people probably do, to be honest with you, because we're not accountants or bookkeepers most people that run a business.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to say that I've done some budgeting, no, I haven't. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that I just want to hammer home this point really for, as I mentioned, David, there'd be more people probably watching the recording because these are recorded and I didn't send loads of reminders out for this video. But anyone else watching, I want to hammer home that budgets are not for accountants. I really want to stress that point. They're not just for accountants and bookkeepers. They're not for bankers, financially, trained people. You don't need to be really good at maths. I mean, really, the three areas for any business I think are vital for you from a financial perspective is looking at the trends on your P&L. So, is my revenue going up and down? Is my cost of sales going up or down? My net profit going up or down? And looking at those three simple numbers. So revenue, cost of sales, which gives you gross profit, and your net profit, they are the most important numbers for a lot of people. And then you can start looking at trends. We spent more on marketing, but our revenue's not gone up. That's one area. The other area is cash flow management, and Profit First really helps with that. So that's where we put so much focus on that. I mean, it goes beyond cash flow, but it's a kind of centerpiece with Profit First. And the final one is budgeting. And really all budgeting is kind of what do I expect? What would I like to happen? So that there can be a bit of a confusion between budgeting and forecasting. Those words get used interdependent, mixed in really. And forecasting is a little bit more specific. So forecasting is, to the best of our knowledge, to the pound, what are we expecting to happen? So that's why you hear the phrase cash flow forecast. So that's literally like, when do I expect this money to hit the bank? What have I invoiced already? And so that's forecasting. Budgeting's not as scientific. Budgeting is a realistic kind of guesstimate of what you'd like and expect to happen. It shouldn't be too creative. It shouldn't be, doubling your business without any logic behind that. But at the same time, it should kind of maybe nudge you a little bit in terms of the direction you want to go. So our budget for last year, we generally budget about a 15 to 20% increase in revenue, but that's our business. For some people, it could be that there might not be growth. There might be that consistency. It might be a 5% increase. Some people shrinking, and their budget might be a smaller set of numbers. So it's being realistic, but just pushing you in where you think things should go. Let's dive in to that now. Just share my screen. Right.
See, can I just jump in?
Yeah.
That for me already is interesting, because just the word budget, you saying, we're budgeting for 15% increase. I would never, the word budget doesn't mean that to me.
Yeah.
Budget means I've got 100 quid and I need to spend X amount on, rent, X amount on this, X amount on that. And that's my budget. That's how I perceive it.
Yeah. So, but budget in, really good question. So budget in your, in the everyday consumer sense, does tend to be exactly that. A budget being, this is my Christmas budget.
Yeah.
This is if you're using Profit First, it might be, I've got a pot of money and this is my budget for marketing. But so it is often used in that context more personally, but with a business perspective, it's not so much, because we're predicting the future really. So what we're really doing is I imagine all of you at some point have looked at a profit and loss account in your business. So you've looked at your sales and your expenses. You've got an idea what profit and loss account looks like. So what we're trying to do is really guess what that profit and loss account is going to look like for the next 12 months. And sometimes you will have budget in the ordinary sense, David, I guess. Sometimes it will be, do you know what? I can safely say that my accounting costs or my insurance is going to be this, because this is my budget and I'm spending that. Where we move beyond the typical budget is really when we're talking about revenue. Because we don't really know, do we, what the revenue is going to be? So that's where it takes a little bit of a different story. But you're exactly right. I think that there's still an element. There's definitely an element of that, what you're saying, still valid. Because when you create your budget in this sense, you want it to be as realistic of what's going to happen. And if you've got a budget for something, it will still need to show on your 12-month projection. So, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of labels, to be honest, because you know, in the accounting world, we have a word called advisory, and what it means is basically doing stuff that's more than the minimum with clients. But if you ask 100 accountants what does advisory mean, they all have a different view. So for me, I guess for me, what we're trying to do is basically a 12-month projection of what we expect to happen if it all goes to plan, really, I'd say. But also, I would say, it's a really interesting point, is with all of these things, and this is, I'm trying to think of other examples, but you've got to apply it to you. You know, when you do profit first for yourselves, you've got to tweak it a little bit so it makes sense for you. So I think a bit of tweaking is good, really, to make it work for you. So just share my screen. Right, so okay, right, just move the Zoom header out of the way. So I haven't needed to do slides or anything this time because I got a bit slide fatigue because we had similar slides for 2 months in a row. So I thought, you know, we're all sick of seeing our pink and teal branding. Let's mix it up and we can dive into Xero, get a bit more interesting. Well, I've got a tab open at the top as well. It's in its infancy. I've really just started this in the last sort of couple of months, and I've not really pushed it out there, but I've created a new YouTube channel specifically for Xero. So if any of you guys have got any Xero questions, I'm encouraging them at the moment, because I'll go and do a video for you and I'll put it on YouTube as a reference point. So there's only a few videos on here at the moment, but it's going to build, you know, the current channel we've got. It takes a long time. But it's there to create value. It is there for you guys. Any questions, fire it away and I'm happy to create a video. But if you want to, I sound like a YouTuber, but if you want to like and subscribe, then you'll see the notifications. Okay, so diving into this. So this is a demo company for Xero. So just out of interest, Charmaine, do you use a bookkeeping system? Do you use Xero or anything else?
Unfortunately, we're with Sage.
Okay.
Because that was what our accountant, when we were setting up, he wanted us to do Sage, so we did. But 12 years on, I am really ready for a change.
Is it the cloud online version of Sage, or is it like
just moved to that from the desktop version, and that was purely to get more logins, because I've got an apprentice now. So, and with the desktop one, it's just horrendously expensive and very complicated to get more than one person being able to log in and work at the same time.
Oh, and the problem with all the different versions is like different versions of Sage, like desktop versions, and that used to create so much challenges for us as accountants in the past. I mean, I wouldn't feel like, I don't know if alienated is the right word, but I wouldn't have too much FOMO that we're talking about Xero, because at the end of the day, if you're on, I say the main thing is you're online. If you've got the online version of Sage, you're heading in the right direction. Sage, QuickBooks, Xero, they have similarities. They're all trying to do the same thing ultimately, and that's keep on top of your numbers, connect your bank feed. We just had to pick one early on. We picked Xero. We've kind of stuck with it, but you should be able to do something very similar on Sage. And to be honest, you can take this principle and do it on a spreadsheet as well, but I'll do it on Xero because most of our clients tend to use Xero. So this is the demo company. So just think of this as your business, really. I won't go into too much detail on, sort of using Xero, but, Daniel and David, you'd probably be familiar, the Reconcile Bank. Well, actually, you're more recent to Xero, David, aren't you? You probably don't need to log in, I guess. I guess this is new to you, is it? Have you logged in before?
Yeah. No, it's all new. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, from your perspective, it might be worth watching the first couple of, at some point, the second and third video here. Would be a nice, if you're interested. You don't have to, because obviously we do bookkeeping, but give you a little bit of an overview what Xero's about. What happens.
No, I need to get my head around Xero, so yes, I'll do that. Yeah.
So this is a reconciliation screen. So basically what we're saying is that this has come from the bank account, and then we got to reconcile it and say what it's for. So if a customer's paying us, they're probably paying an invoice. That's why it's matching green, and we can kind of okay it, and the system knows that invoice has been paid. If money's going out, we can allocate it to an account. So There's no description there to say what that is, but let's pretend it's wages or salaries. Just make a contact, call it MISC. Should be something for salaries. I'll put that. Let's pretend it's a salary. I don't know exactly what that is. Anyway, so but what we want to dive into today is the budgeting feature. So if we go into accounting at the top, and then you've got these saved reports. So you've got account transactions, payables, receivables, different things. To be honest, as a business owner, the main thing you want to look at is your profit and loss account. Maybe who owes you money and who you need to pay money to, but that depends on your business. You're more of a cash-based business, David, so that won't be as relevant for you.
Yeah.
Each receivables, because that's more when you raise an invoice and you're waiting for someone to pay you. But yeah, profit and loss, age receivables, payables, probably the main ones for a lot of people. But if we go into advanced here, reports, we can look at lots of other reports in Xero. And what we're looking for is something to do with budgeting. So we've got Budget Manager on the left-hand side here. So that's where we're going to spend our time today. Just a little bit of tip on Xero. You can star things. And then you can then access it from the menu. So it'll be on this main menu now. So it's just easy to come back to. So we're going to go into Budget Manager. And really, I mean, I'm big on software. So I've actually created a mini AI software tool, which I'm going to share with people next year, which can be quite powerful to create a knowledge base for your business and save your team a lot of time. So I don't know if techie is the right word, very comfortable with software and tech. That being said, sometimes I think we need to forget the software and just ask ourselves what we're trying to do. So all we're really trying to do is kind of look at this screen as a spreadsheet. So it might be on Xero. That's why it doesn't really matter if it's on Sage. It's kind of just numbers. And we've got months at the top. So we've got January, February, March. On the left-hand side, we've got the profit and loss categories in Xero, but, it could be any system. It's basically, this business has got looks like one main category for sales. Some businesses might have different types of sales. You might have sales 1, sales 2, if you've got different products, different services. So what's happening here, if we look at the dates at the top, it says start date, April 23. So I'm just going to make that a bit more recent and see if I can make it a little bit more relevant, because this is a demo company. Hopefully it's got the information we need. Yeah, that's fine. It's got the information we need. So I'm starting it. So if you were doing this for real, I mean, you might be a bit late, in October. You'd probably do it for November. But let's say we're going to do this from October onwards. We're going to create a budget for this business. So what you would do, the good thing, I guess, of using something like Xero and hopefully Sage, and QuickBooks would do a similar thing, is on Xero, it lets us have actual figures in the past. So it says actuals of 3 months, but I might increase that to 6 months. Click update. So now when we look at this screen, I'll just explain it. Everything that's white, so from April 23 at the top all the way to September 23, those that's happened. That's real figures. That's actual figures we're looking at. Anything in white on the left hand side. So September's total income was £13,714. Anything with a blue box is not actual figures. That's us putting in our budget, essentially. That's us putting in our guesstimate, really. And the reason why it's handy to have these actual figures, if you were starting on a spreadsheet, you wouldn't just be able to click a few buttons and get these actual figures. So that's quite handy because we've got a reference point now to look back at. If you're doing it on a spreadsheet or something, then you would just get your information wherever it is. Really, you want it monthly. You want to be able to see what happened in September, what happened in August, and then you can scroll down. We've got income at the top. So if we look at September, we've got 13,714. Just going to zoom in a little bit. We've got 13,714 for income for September. And then we've got some cost of sales, £1,950. And then we've got a gross profit of 11,764. I won't go too much into the sort of terminology with all of that. That's kind of just what's happened. We've got a lot of advertising, 7045, advertising and marketing. I see you've got a friend joining you, Charmaine.
He's 12 weeks, my daughter's puppy.
Last week. Yeah, we got 2 dogs. Ours are a little bit older. We've got a Labrador that's he's about 14 months now, but he's still a bit of a baby, really.
We've got a chocolate Labrador who's 9, who is still a baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one's responsible for most of the noise.
No, I can't really hear much, to be honest.
Good.
Yeah. So we've got advertising here. We've got some example accounting fees. We've got bits of cleaning, but nothing for September. We've got general expenses and so on. You know, whatever's relevant for your business. And then at the
Can I
bottom,
just ask, because I'm just trying to follow you as you're going along.
Yeah.
I've got my budget manager open and I'm trying to pull in actuals, but it's not pulling in anything. Is that because it's trying to pull it in from the previous year, or?
It might be, when did you, because obviously the team's been a bit closer to what's going on. How long have you been using the new Xero for the new limited company for, Dan?
June, so I just thought it would pull in from June onwards.
Yeah, so if you went in, if you clicked your start date as same as me, October or November, and then an actuals 3 or 6 months, it should give you some figures in there, really, for your Xero. If they're not,
Oh yes, because I didn't have October in there. I had the right. Okay,
okay.
that makes sense. Yeah, got you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it's just that the dates, it's a little bit fiddly, to be honest, at the beginning. But once you get the hang of it with the dates, you'll be fine. And you can go back further. You don't have to put the actuals in if you've got a clean slate. But for some businesses, so for yours, David, for example, it's probably fairly consistent. So I'd say what's happening with your actuals is probably a good reflection to give you a foundation to put some estimates in. So,
Okay.
So September, if we go all the way down, it's got total overheads and it's got net profit. It doesn't really matter what the numbers are, but that's the kind of numbers. And then what we do essentially in October is we just put numbers in boxes. Really, that's all we're kind of doing. But it's handy because we've got some data to look at on the left-hand side. So what I do with clients, you can get as specific and as granular as you want. And by the way, before I forget, this can be exported into a spreadsheet. So because I think Sage might do it for you. I'd be surprised, Charmaine, if they don't do it for you. But I'll just show you what a spreadsheet looks like, because you can literally go to the bottom, export this into a spreadsheet in a click of a button. So just give you an idea, because then we kind of understand what we're looking at. That we're really looking at just numbers in a spreadsheet, but we're doing it on Xero instead. But we'll come back to that in a second, because what I tend to do is I export it at the end, and I'll show you a reason why I do that. So if you've got a business so you've got 2 options. You can put a bit of a ballpark figure in. And the thing is with budgets, one of the first things we learned when I was doing training in accounting was budgets, forecasts, whatever you want to call them. They change. You know, we put our numbers in, something happens and they change. So it's not getting it right at the beginning that's important. It's coming back to it and tweaking it if things are changing in your business. You shouldn't be tweaking it every week, every day, but maybe once a quarter potentially. Like, just have a look at it and see, does this still make sense? You know, if you've got a service-based business and you've got a big contract, you're going to need to change your estimate because you've got a new big contract that's coming in. So what I would, for illustration purposes, I'm going to put a round benchmark figure in of 10K. So put 10K in, and this is where it can really save you some time. So what you can do is click that little green arrow, and it will say, do you want to populate the rest of the data for the next 12 months, because we've got a 12-month period at the top. You can do a fixed amount of £10,000, or you can actually do an increase. You can do a percentage increase, or you can do a fixed amount increase, like an extra £100 a month. I'm just going to do a flat £10,000. I'm going to click apply. So all we're doing here is using a little bit like a formula or a little bit of a shortcut to populate future months there. Okay. But what you can do if you wanted to, and I do this in my business, and I split my income into all the different categories. So we'll have bookkeeping, we'll have accounting, we'll have profit first, tax planning, whatever it is. I will go back and I will look at it. You can even go back further, by the way. You could go back to last year, you know, if the data was there. So if I update this one, I'm just going to click save, then click update. And one option would be, you know, if you're a seasonal business, bit like yours, Dan, you could go back to the same month last year. That might be useful for some people, not necessarily. So we could go back and say, right, October 22 wasn't a very good month. This looks like a small business that's just starting, maybe 417 quid. So that's probably not relevant, but it might be that you're a consistent business and that's quite useful going back to last year. But if you're uncertain, and there's not a right or wrong answer, by the way. I've not necessarily got the answers for people doing their budgets, and the business owner is probably the best person to have a little bit of a guess what you expect your revenue to be. So put 10K in, but if you've thought, right, I know December's a big month. So in your business, David, obviously Christmas, maybe people spend more money or whatever. Let's pretend this was your business. We'll make that a bit bigger just for December. We can do that if we want to. And yeah, and then what you do is you kind of go down the screen. So if we focus on 1 month, because there's obviously a lot of information on this screen, let's just focus on 1 month. Let's look at October, and we go down and we look at what happened for the last few months, and we'll populate some information. So we've got purchases. Let's pretend that purchases is going to be £1,000 every month, and we're going to break that for the next 12 months. We can override it if we want to. So we're giving ourselves, actually, with this data, it's not a bad kind of estimate looking at the numbers, a gross profit of £9,000. So that's your sales minus your cost of sales. And then we can do the same for the overheads. Just go through marketing. If I was looking at this as an accountant, I doubt this business can afford to spend £7 grand on its marketing every month. That's probably a one-off expense. So actually, it's probably going to be a lower amount. I don't know. Let's put 1,500 quid in. But it's all relevant for you and your business. And then we'll do the same with some of this here. We can just pretend that's 15, populate it all the way across. And by the way, if you wanted to factor in a percentage increase, you could just click on the 1,500, click on the arrow and say, right, actually, I can do a 5% increase every month on my £1,500 advertising spend, or I can do a fixed amount. Let's pretend it's a £50 increase every month. Click apply, and then that goes up every month now, 1,550, 1,600, and so on. Any sort of questions before I carry on going through this?
Just a quick question. Is there sort of a way to like add a note or anything as to like how you've reached those calculations? Because I can imagine sort of working it all out based on how many properties we've got at the moment and blah, 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 and then forgetting that when I come back to look at it the next time as to what I based it on.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I might even send that to Xero as feedback. There is software out there that can do that, Dan. So you can pay for other software. I'm a big fan of kind of simplifying it as much as we can. Sometimes we need to, get something different. What I do is I save this as a PDF, or I save it as, I tend to save it as a Google Sheets or a Excel spreadsheet. And then what I do is I put some notes on that spreadsheet to explain all the decisions I've made. And you can just have a little, if we go back to the spreadsheet, which should be open here, you could pretend this was the real numbers. You could just have some notes at the bottom. So nothing too fancy at the moment. I think it makes sense for them to add that in. There is definitely some paid separate software out there that can do that. But what I do as well is I save my version of my budget. So if I create a budget today, I would save it and say budget to I don't know, to the 30th September 2024. I tend to do it with my accounting year. So I've already done my budget for March 24. I've done it ages ago. I've just gone in and I kind of update it every now and again. I'll be doing my budget for March 25. So for you guys and anyone else watching, whatever your accounting year is, I would be thinking kind of that far ahead. You kind of always want to have a 12-month sort of forecast, ideally. Obviously, it might be a little bit easier for me to say that because I'm an accountant and I'm kind of used to doing that. But I think once you do it, it becomes quite a routine sort of thing. Yeah, and then just make notes for the copy that you save, because when people do cash flow forecasting and stuff like that, often they call it scenario planning. So you might have actually budget 1, budget 2, and they're different scenarios. And one of them might be, what if we get that big job? Or what if we get that big contract? That's sometimes possible as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so really, does that seem fairly straightforward? Does that make sense to people, the process of doing that? Yeah. And honestly, once you start to, well, I'm going to show you why this is useful actually in a second. I won't jump ahead. So you can just put the numbers in, populate the numbers, and then what I do is I sense check those figures. So you can click save quite often, because if you press the wrong thing, if you press back on your browser or something, you might lose some of the numbers you put in. So I click save fairly often normally. So you can kind of view it on here, but what I like to do is I like to then export. Is it a bit more technical? I mean, it's adding another step, but I think it's not too onerous to do this. Export it to Google Sheets or Excel, wherever you want. And we've got that budget on here now. It's just going to give me another version of what I just did. And what I do here is I then get rid of all the data we don't need. So we've done this budget from October. So I'm just going to get rid of all the stuff before then, because we only had that on there to help us make some decisions. I'm conscious, obviously, there might be some Excel things. I'm not necessarily an Excel wizard, but any questions on that, you can fire that to me after or something, and me or the team can answer any Excel questions. But all you really need to do is highlight what you want to delete those columns. Now we're starting from the right place. We'll start from October. Let's pretend our financial year is September, so it's nice and timely. If it wasn't September, I'm just going to go back into Xero. Will it let me go beyond 12 months? Okay, it will. So if it wasn't September, let's pretend it was December 24 was your year end and you're just ahead of the game. What you would do now is you'd actually make it 24 months and just make sure you populate everything at least to the end of December. And then when you export it into Google Sheets, you can just cut off what you don't need. So for my illustration, keep it nice and simple. We're going from October 23 to September 24. And actually, if we look at this column here, we've now got a budget and a forecast for our business. So that's kind of version 1 in simple terms for you guys to have some form of budget, kind of estimate of what you want or expect to happen in your business in the next 12 months. You can obviously slice and dice this data. So you might be able, you might want to just add up quarters and have quarterly totals. So my screen says at the bottom that the net profit is 21,370 for the first 3 months. So you could kind of just have quarterly summaries, but it's completely up to you. We've now got a budget for the year. And I'd save this and date it, as I said, because if you make a new one, you know what's happened. And I make notes on the file as well. So this might be budget here, and I might make a little note saying based on X, Y, and Z, and my new budget in 3 months' time, something might have changed potentially. So where the magic starts to happen, is there any questions on this side of it? Sort of bringing it to Excel?
Not on bringing it to Excel. The only thing that I would ask is, like, how often are you going back to sort of revisit it is it sort of like a monthly thing or a quarterly thing to see, like, was the figures accurate? And then if it wasn't accurate, are you then, what are you doing with that information? You're just using it to then on the new forecast, or?
Yeah, so for me, my budget I created up to March 24, we're you don't want to like change it to the point where it's always moving. So I had a target for like revenue and stuff like that for March 24, and we're above budget. we're not loads above budget, but we're a certain amount above budget. I haven't really needed to amend my budget because it's still in the same ballpark of what I expected at the beginning, if you see what I mean. So I would say if things change so fundamentally, I would change it. But actually, the reason why you don't want to just, because we're not trying to get perfect. And actually, I quite like, if you're happy with your original budget and you think that made a lot of sense, I quite like, if it still makes sense, to stick with it, because then you've got something to really compare against. Because I know you said we should change it in certain circumstances, but it's more being aware of what's happening. You know, it's still relevant. You know, if I bought a business or one of us bought a new business, it would, you know, change our old budget, for example. But it's nice to say, right, this is what I set off to do. This is what I did do. It's quite nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, so are you then recording like your actuals on the sheet so you can see like what the difference is between what you projected and the actuals, so that you know, like if you were wildly out, you would then look into why you were wildly out?
Yeah, so what the beauty with Xero, or a software that does this, is now what we can do, let's save this. We're happy that we've got a foundation. We're happy we've got a blueprint, basically. So what we can do now on, I was saying, Charmaine, this is the benefit of a system, you know, whether it's Xero, Sage, if it does that, we can now go into a different report, which is what you don't do on Excel. It's the downside to having it on Excel, is we can go into budget variance. So I'm just going to star that, I'm going to go into budget variance, and we can compare our budget down now and say, what's our real figures in Xero? What did we budget? And this is one of the key reports I look at every month in my business. I like to look at. So we can see here, budget for October. Seems like a lot on the screen, but if we start on the left, it's the same idea. We've got income, and then we've got the different categories going down. We've got October on the left, actual figures. So at the moment, October's actual figures is 5039. We've put in a budget of 10 grand. So we're saying at the moment, we're down on our October revenue by 4960.20. Yeah, and actually the beauty with this is not only can you do monthly, you can do the financial year to date. So this particular report is showing us from April to October where we are in actual figures versus our budget on the right hand around here. So it's saying that we've done 34,303, but our budget was 24. So actually overall, we're 10,000 up on our budget.
Yeah, got you. Okay, yeah, that's really good. I was thinking you had to all do it manually, but yeah, that's handy.
And that's really the key. That's the benefit of all this. And this is the report. This is why we do all that hard work, is so you can just run a budget and variance and see what's going on. And yeah, if it's so far every month out, so if October was out every month, that's when I'd question my budget, if you see what I mean. But actually, if it's maybe a little bit bigger, maybe it's 10-20% higher revenue, but you know why, because maybe you've been doing more marketing, you signed up some business or whatever it is, then it makes sense, really. Yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah, I didn't want to drag it on too much, but I would say it's one of the tools in your armory of business owners just to get started. You know, I say to everyone, not just with business and numbers, but we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for progress. And it's just practice makes perfect is key when it comes to doing this sort of thing, really. What I might do next month is I might complete the kind of triangle that I've mentioned, because I said profit first is really important. That's helping your cash flow management. Budgeted is really important because it makes you think ahead. It makes you plan strategically. It makes you analyze what's going on in your business. But also your monthly P&L is really important. So what I might do next month is drill into the monthly P&L and just show people how to kind of analyze it for a little bit more, and what you should be paying attention to on your monthly figures in your P&L. Yeah, any questions on budgeting or anything else?
No, I think just for me, like I was saying, like with the seasonal thing, because it's not just seasonal, it's also like what type of properties we're managing for people will depend. So the only way that I could see that I could kind of work out a budget is to kind of work out on each individual month what a certain size property would generally earn me on average. and then do that for each of the property sizes and across each of the months, and then kind of work it out from there. And I don't know if I'm being a bit too, if there's an easier way, like you're saying, like, look at things a bit more simply, but is that, the sort of thing that you would do if you were in my business?
If I was doing your business, I would start initially, this is just me, I would start initially with like just the overall top line figure. But then I would drill that down. So this budget variance here only shows sales. But actually, in your world, you could take that to the nth degree and, look at all your properties and everything. But the next layer down from just one level is different types of sales or services. So for us, we split our budget revenue into basically accounting, tax, bookkeeping, VAT. So I would take it down one level. I mean, you might just want to start with sales, because the problem is diving in too much. It's the same with profit first. We kind of find it a bit overwhelming and we give up. So it might be you take the simplistic approach of just putting a top line revenue in, and in the background, you've got something to justify it, why you feel it was, that sort of number. But then pretty quickly, when you get used to it and you build the habit, my first thing would be building the habit, but then would be, can we take it to a little bit more detail? And that will just be the main sales categories in your business, the main types of income. And then in the future, if you really wanted to, it would probably be a lot of work, but you could almost do it per property. But I wouldn't worry about that straight away, just because I think it'd be quite a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it's just getting my head around, working out the figures without knowing the breakdown of what each property would be for each particular time of year, basically.
Yeah. And some, do you know what? It's a good point, because some businesses will be more complicated than others. Really, yours probably is a little bit more complicated, Dan, to be honest, from a budgeting perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing is, some of you might have seen it, because it's kind of hard to get to this link because our system doesn't like sharing it on our emails. But once you're here, this Profit First Club is where you can find the recordings. So I've got, I need to update that, but if you go into previous webinars there, or it also says here, previous webinars, I'm going to share every single session every month, and you just click on the little arrow, and then you'll get access to the video for that session. So I'll include this one. Just really wanted to do a reminder for people of that's where you can access all of our resources, and that will build over time. What I'm trying to think what's worth sharing, because I normally share some free stuff or something that's relevant. I think really it's just kind of the video and the exercise. I mean, I might just send the spreadsheet link so people can refer back to it, so they can relate it to the video maybe. But if any of you or anyone else is watching got any questions, just reach out. More than happy to cover those. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Okay.